everybody. Our first SNS Chat for our July through December program. I'm very excited. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to have you guys in person and both near and far on Zoom. Thanks for joining. So as I was saying before we start recording, I'm going to do a little spiel on intermittent fasting. And then I want to talk a little bit about the accountability tool, and then I'd love to open it up for questions. So intermittent fasting, I have a couple different names for it. At Slow and Steady, we also call it intentional fueling, which I think is nice because it puts a kind of a positive spin on it. And I think that a lot of times we just hear the word fasting and we're sort of like, I can't do that, and then you start thinking of all the reasons why you can't fast and how you're going to get lightheaded in that time you had that experience where you didn't eat and you almost passed out and you've been told all your life you're hypoglycemic and, on and on. So intentional fueling, it kind of puts a different spin on it. And then also intuitive eating is another thing that I feel like is intermittent fasting on a deeper level. And so I think that what happens as a result of intermittent fasting or intentional fueling is that eventually you get to that intuitive eating and that you're really just listening to your body and what it needs, and not so much what you should be doing. And that goes as far as when you eat as well as what you eat. And so you'll start to notice, you'll start to crave certain things as we go through this program. And to me, you listen to those cravings. And the truth is once you do our Beyond Sugar Challenge and you start eating real food, you're going to actually start to crave real food. You're going to be like, oh, I'm actually just craving nuts, or I'm craving citrus, or I'm craving kale. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous in some ways, but it is true. And it really does happen. And so I feel like almost the goal of intentional fueling or intermittent fasting is getting to that place of intuitive eating. Intuitive feasting. Yes, we can call it intuitive feasting, of course. Okay, so in terms of intermittent fasting, I think probably some of you have heard this story, but really the way I found it just really quickly is we had to start marking these parameters on our charts in the office, like if people have high blood pressure and that you counsel them, and if they have an elevated BMI and you counsel them, or they have a depression screening and you counsel them, and you're making a plan and you have to literally check counseled, no plan, counseled, plan. And so in order to fulfill these boxes, I thought, well, I've never really talked to women about BMI because I'm an obstetrician first and foremost, and I'm talking with women about gaining weight, not losing weight. And I also grew up in a time where I trained with a lot of older male physicians who would essentially make women cry in the office about their weight. And I remember in training being like, I will never do that. I will never make someone feel bad about who they are, about their weight. I will definitely try to come about it from a health perspective, but from a very different perspective, because these women were, it was mortifying. It was mortifying to be sitting there watching it. And it's just, there's so much wrong about it. Anyway, that's a tangent. And so I really just sort of, in some ways,
over till 9:30.
Hey, Katie, you want to mute yourself?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
And you're fine. And so I kind of shied away from it in my GYN practice, to be honest. And I would obviously, like I said, in my OB practice, we talked about gaining weight. So I started to do a lot of research, and I came upon a nephrologist, Jason Fung, and his book, The Obesity Code. And one of the people from actually the one who sent in the before and after picture, that if anybody of you guys saw that on social media, I posted it because she looks amazing, no face, but she felt like this should be required reading for my program. So I thought that came out on her exit interview, that she felt like this to her made the biggest difference. And to me, it did too. This is why this is part of my program, reading this book. Now, that being said, first of all, it's $11 on Amazon, or you could listen to it. Or, I do think it's the book, but he has YouTube stuff that is free. He's on Instagram. His YouTube videos are fabulous. And you could literally watch one a week or a day if you want. And it's just their short little, but this, now, when you get this and read it, you have to also on Amazon buy A Harlequin Romance, because this is the driest thing on the base of the planet. Okay. Like you got to be reading something fun because this is not it. Okay. But it breaks it down and it debunks all the stuff that has happened in our society since really the 70s, when the cereal companies influenced our food pyramid and made breakfast the most important meal of the day. That's when that happened. And it is not because it's the most important meal of the day. And especially even if it were the most important thing to eat first thing of your day, eating cereal and breakfast foods especially is not the healthiest thing you can do. So on many counts, that food pyramid and that whole notion, he also talks a lot about physician training. And as a physician, maybe an hour of nutritional education in my entire medical training. So, you know, I've gone on with Sloan Study to do now like coursework in nutrition so that I feel like I know what I'm talking about and can help guide other people, but it's not come in the medical training. And doctors do not know how to tell people to eat healthy. And so, so this really goes through the science behind what's happening in our body when we eat food, what happens to that, and we break it down, what happens to it, which we're going to go through a teeny bit here. And then when we fast, what's happening in our body and why it is so incredibly beneficial for us to do so. At least, and I'm not talking about 5-day fast or 7-day fast like that, anything extreme, not even a 24-hour, but some sort of intermittent or fasting, or just intuitively, like when are you hungry? So, okay. So that's Jason Fung and required reading. Yep. All right. So when we eat, just a quick basic science, we eat food. It gets broken down essentially into glucose and fatty acids. And the glucose goes into our bloodstream. Essentially, fatty acids there become your triglycerides. And so, but the glucose is kind of the main factor that gets broken down to. It's in your bloodstream. And as soon as it hits your bloodstream, your pancreas puts out insulin. Insulin's job is to get that blood sugar, the sugar in your blood from your bloodstream into your cells so that you can utilize it. And it gets through the Krebs cycle. It gets transported into ATP, and ATP is what we use in our mitochondria for energy production and expulsion. So we eat, we can move, right? So now, sometimes there are certain situations where our cells get lazy. And so people who have PCOS, people who have gestational diabetes, glucose intolerance, a lot of times their very quick triggered systems are that their cells get lazy and they don't take the insulin doesn't work on their cells, so they don't take in the blood sugar quite as well. And then the blood sugar stays high in the blood, and then that's how you get prediabetes or diabetes. And that's sort of the cycle. If you don't use it right away, then you store it. And when you store that glucose, part of it will go into your liver, and anything after that is directly made into fat. So there's a lot of misconception out there that if we eat fat, that we get fat on our bodies, but that's not true. Fat's broken down very differently. If we eat sugar and we don't use it right away, when we store it, it's stored in our bodies as fat. So it's almost, you wish that dietary fat was called something different than body fat, because they're not the same. And people think they're the same. You think, oh, if I eat fat, I'm gonna get fat. And we used to think that in the 80s. Olestra, oh my God, eat all this sugary stuff, but don't eat fat. You know, meanwhile, we need fat. Our brains need fat. That's are essential to us. Sugar is not essential because all your other foods get broken down into glucose, but table sugar and processed food and like white sugar, we do not need any of that. So, all right, so that's when we eat. And then the question is, well, what happens when we fast? And so, like I said, as we eat and then we stop eating. We stop eating at 7 o'clock. And so for the next 1 to 2 hours, our body kind of focuses on burning all that immediate sugar. So again, if you eat after 7 and go sit on the couch, yeah, you're not really utilizing it. Oftentimes a walk after a meal is a really good idea to utilize that blood sugar. But essentially we go through our glucose stores pretty quickly, like in 2 to 4 hours. And after we go through our glucose stores, and this is what happens overnight sometimes, when we're sleeping, our body, and diabetics know this because they monitor their blood sugar, and so they can see these spikes. But as we're sleeping, our liver starts to put out blood sugar, especially like around 4 a.m. when our cortisol levels start increasing, then our liver starts to put out glucose because we're about to wake up and we need something to like get up and go. And so our liver starts to put out that it's stored in the form of, it's called glycogen, but essentially it's stored glucose and our liver pops out and it's in our bloodstream to use as soon as we wake up. So number one, the whole eating first thing in the morning, you really, if you were to listen to your body, most people, 85% of people would say they're not actually hungry in the morning. That's one reason why. Your liver just dumped all this blood glucose. You don't need it. Your brain senses that too. It doesn't turn on your hunger hormones because it senses the glucose in your bloodstream. So now you're waking up and it's 4 a.m., it's 7 a.m., you're still not eating, you go through your glycogen stores, and what happens next is you start to pull from your fat stores because you don't have any other glucose available, and the other energy in your body is in the form of ketone bodies that's stored in your fat cells. So once you run through all your glucose stores and your liver stores, now you're starting to pull fat. So now you're at that like 8 to 11, a.m. or hours of fast, or 14 to 16 hours of fasting. And you start to pull from your fat. And one of the things people notice in the mornings is they almost get this like mental clarity. And it's kind of weird because you're like, I'm fasting. You think I would be sluggish and oh my God, I need food. And but after a while, when your body gets efficient at this metabolic switching from sugar to fat, burning for energy, when you burn fat, as I mentioned, it's in the form of ketone bodies. Well, ketone bodies are by far the preferred fuel for your brain. And they actually like turn on proteins and neurotransmitters that give you mental clarity. So it's a little bit of a win-win if you ask me. Now you're burning fat, which who doesn't want to be burning fat, right? Especially without like going to the gym 6 hours a day, which you don't need to do. And you're clearer. And so your body can get really efficient at that and really used to it. And so that's kind of essentially what happens as we fast for those like 14 to 16 hours. That's the stuff about the ketone bodies. Okay, so the other thing that sort of fascinated me about this is, for people who are out there like a little bit sciencey geeky, is I'm always wondering like what's happening on the cellular level in our bodies when we do something, like what's happening in the cells, like, and why is it beneficial for us? And so there's a term out there that's I just learned with all of this. It's called hormesis. And so I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's essentially our body's reaction to adaptive stress. And there's that old saying like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But the truth is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. As long as it's adaptive stress is like mild stress to your body. Now, harsh stress and continued stress over time is going to break down the system. Like we know that. But a little bit of stressors, it's like why we give women in preterm labor steroids before, if they're going to have a preterm birth, because those steroids provide this little bit of stress in the cortisol that creates a bunch of cellular changes that actually mature the baby a little bit faster, helps their lungs, helps their gut, helps their brain. And it's that same idea. And that's actually what fasting does to our cells. And so our cells start to get more efficient, and they have better DNA repair, and they start to generate more mitochondria, and that's the powerhouse of the cell where that energy is derived. And there's a phrase out there, autophagy. So autophagy is when it's like cell cleanup. It's like getting rid of your old damaged DNA and allowing new healthy cells. And that's autophagy is huge in the anti-aging or in the longevity research right now, because if you can continue to get rid of old dead cells and generate new cells, you are younger and you're cellularly. And so decreasing inflammation is another benefit of that hormesis. And then they say also like your response to antioxidant stress. And so just, again, it's just all our cells function better when they're under this little bit of adaptive stress. In humans, a bunch of studies out there about intermittent fasting, and definitely seems to help lower cholesterol, decrease lipids, hemoglobin A1C, insulin resistance, blood pressure, weight circumference. And I'm going to be honest, in my first group of 50 people, I've had a little bit over half who have gotten labs, and everyone but one, whose both parents have high cholesterol, have had changes in their labs through the program so far. One has really great, I actually can't believe it. I mean, I can because I really believe in it and I've read the studies, but like to see it in this group, it's like fascinating. So anyway, it's exciting. So it's exciting for you guys. So I hope. All right. So the other thing is, okay, in humans, I think we went through all of that. Oh, memory. That's the other thing. And there's a lot of stuff out there right now about dementia. And, you know, I don't know if anybody here follows Mark Hyman. He's a functional medicine doctor. And I'm actually not, to be honest, you guys, like all that interested in functional medicine. I agree with a lot of it, but functional medicine, they deal with a lot of supplements. And I'm just not really a supplement person. And so I really believe you should get as much as you can through real food. Now, if you are a vegan and you don't have, your B12 is low, you have to take a B12 supplement. There's no other way to get it except for animal food. So in that regard, I think there are some exceptions, but I feel like people go in to see functional medicine doctors and I think they do look at the whole picture. And I'm sure there's many. Mark Hyman is an amazing functional medicine doctor, but a lot of times it is, you sort of leave with a bag full of supplements and $300 and $350 later. It's just like, just maybe eat real food first. Like just try it first, you know? So lifestyle medicine is a little bit of a different spin, really just more on the lifestyle that we lead, how we move our bodies, what we eat, than functional medicine. But that aside, Mark Hyman, what was I even going to say about him? Oh, he does a lot of studies about, he talks a lot about Alzheimer's, and that they are now calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes, which is really interesting. Yeah. And that they're finding that, again, it's like almost like vinegar. Sugar is almost like pickling the brain like vinegar might or something, or, you know, but it seems to be that this processed sugar and processed food and stuff in terms of Alzheimer's. And if you think about it, as our diets have changed, I mean, did Alzheimer's really exist in the 70s, 80s, when our diets were so different? I don't think so. So really interesting food for thought. So, you know, there's so much out there right now about this that you could kind of get lost and go down rabbit holes, and we don't need to do that. But I think just impressing upon people, I definitely think the obesity code, it would be a really good thing. Just in terms of, I know some of you here are just starting out. A lot of you have tried it before and have had a lot of good success. A couple things I really like about it. I'm a big 18-6 person. That works for me. At the same time, like, I think there's the whole flexibility in fasting, like I wrote this week, is I think you have to really follow that. And, you know, if you're doing 12-hour shifts at a hospital and then you just have to kind of, maybe you don't fast that day. Maybe that's just the day you have off. And I also think, especially if starting out, fasting 4 to 5 days a week and not 2 to 3 is 100% fine. Like, you got to start somewhere. And I think if you almost try to do it too much too soon, then you trip up once or twice and you're like, oh, I can't do it. And oh, it's not really worth it. And oh, I want to be able to go out and do girls' night. Well, do girls' night. Just maybe fast the other nights and don't worry about it on girls' night, and just let it go. And just try to keep some semblance of I do 80-20, maybe 70-30 or 90-10 some weeks, but it's just that idea of like moderation and not like so strict and so that you feel like a failure, or that it doesn't work for you, or because this is all workable for everybody. It's just how you decide to work it into your life. Giving yourself grace. I like that. Yeah, that's what Elizabeth said. Yeah, exactly. A little grace and just be human. It's okay. And, you know, I have a lot of people where have had a ton of success with it, and then they had something that happened. They went on a trip, or a parent got sick, or they, you know, something happened where their just whole lifestyle kind of changed. And it's almost like a realization when we're talking that we're just like, well, you can just sort of restart it anytime you want. Like, you don't have to start a program, or you can just decide, like, actually, I think, and I'm a big Monday person. I think if you guys know me and have seen my emails, or you will, my Mondays are like, we're setting up the week. We're setting up a stage for success for the week. And we're going to put stuff on our calendar, and we're going to pick a couple recipes that we want to make that we know are good for us. And we're going to plan to do a hit, and we're going to go for a walk. And you just set it up so that if you just do these small little things every day, you are successful. And it's really easy. And I don't know about you, but to me, the tick of checking off a box, it's like a little, people say you get a dopamine hit when you get a like on, social media. To me, that was the first dopamine hit that I probably ever recognized. Like, I love checking those boxes. And you do though. You feel, I don't know, like I feel so like good when I complete a list, or I'm like, oh my God, I got through my whole list today pretty much. Like, I don't know. So however you decide to do it, but that's kind of where I want to get into that accountability too also. So we'll just do that in a second. The other thing I just kind of wanted to put out there is that IF is really just the first step in the whole process. And I do believe it's the most important thing, because I feel like it's the most grounding. I think if I tried to start off and tell you all not to eat sugar right away, it'd be like, come on, But I think what you're going to find is, as you find some success and you notice how you feel with intermittent fasting, that you sort of buy in. You're like, oh, I do feel so much better. And next thing you know, just naturally, you're starting to think about what you're putting into your body, not just when. One of my patients said to me, probably the best, she was like, yeah, I mean, I just spent all this time fasting. It's not like I'm going to break it with a donut, And it's kind of, if you think of it, it's kind of true. Like, kind of do want like a handful of nuts or an avocado, or like something that's like good and healthy and gonna like, is good for you. So, so it will all come, but I just, again, grace, I think, is really having grace with yourself, and leniency, but also like making the commitment to practice a few times a week. And just, so let's do the accountability tool real fast. Can I grab your phone? All right, so the accountability tool. So my idea behind this is that eventually it's an app that I want my son Sam to make, because he makes all my apps. So, and he's just starting to work for Amazon. So I'm so excited. But when he has free time, he's going to make me an app. Okay, so I don't know. You guys can kind of see it. Maybe it has weird glare. There it is. Okay. So the idea behind it is, I'm a big swirl or circle person. I feel like they have a ton of significance in life. And then I put the first one out here, this intentional fueling. And so my idea behind it is that on the days that you do it, you click, you just check it off. And so that at the end of the month, you can kind of see, like, did I fast 20% of the month, 80% of the month, 50%? When it's an app, what I want is that you would click on that, and then it will come up, and it will come down to your hours. You can put in the hours that you fasted, which I kind of have you writing down here, but it'll kind of, and then it will all end up also on like a calendar when it's all connected to the app. So that's just the little idea behind it. But so I think that for some people, having to check a box, or knowing if you do check a box, that can be your little dopamine hit, and you can be like, oh, I did it, So if that's helpful, then use it. For other people, you might have another diary or journal or thing that you like. Just whatever you do, I would just say find something that you're making yourself accountable a little bit, and pick a goal. Like, this week or this month, I want to get, maybe it should be this week. This week, I'm going to fast 3 times a week, and I'm going to do it from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., but maybe, and just, after dinner, you're just done. You have your tea and that's it. But so you pick, so like, start really small, pick some days a week, how many days a week, and for how many hours, and then just see if you check it out when you do it. And then the next week, maybe you increase that a little bit, or you stay the same because that felt good and you want to just see how it feels. So that's the idea behind it. Each month we'll get another one, and you'll start then add, you can also add your once a week hit, but then also as you go through, when you're clean eating, you'll check off. So it just allows you to kind of stay accountable for the habits. So I do have you write goals down here if you want. This is another calendar, and what I did is I just put all of our, and this was a suggestion at somebody from my last my beta testers, which I got so many great ideas from them. And one was, I just had this as a blank calendar in case people wanted to fill in something, but she said maybe suggested putting in the event. And so all the slow and steady events, when you pull up that accountability tool or print it, are going to be on the calendar for you. So Oh, so Deb's saying she uses a Zero app. It works well for tracking hours fasted per day and gives you a daily time. Okay, that's great. So Zero app. Yeah, so for people who are app minded, absolutely. Katie, I feel like, did you have an app at one point too?
Mm-hmm.
What did you use?
I use that one, the same
Oh,
one.
okay, cool. So
Zero.
yeah, two votes for Zero app. Like the,
Mhm.
it's spelled like the number.
And it's free.
And it's free. Oh,
It's a glorified timer.
Yeah, it's the glorified timer. That's all.
glorified timer.
But then it does record, like it tracks, so you can go back and look at a calendar and see
That's
Like how many
nice.
days
to
you
exceed your
fasted for.
fast, might meet it, because you can set a goal. Like I have 16 hours, and sometimes I go
Oh.
17 or 18. Sometimes it's like 16 -8.
1601.
Yeah.
1559.
Yeah.
That's me sometimes at like 10:59. I'll be in the office with a handful of nuts. I'm like smelling them before I like put two in my mouth. And then other days it's 1 o'clock and I'm like not even hungry. It's the weirdest thing. But when you start listening to it, it's like crazy how cool it is to listen to your body.
With respect to fasting, what are your thoughts on the 1 meal a day?
Yeah, so it's called an OMAD, right?
Yeah.
So 1 meal a day. So a lot of people, and Jason Fung and a number of other people really subscribe to it. I've done a couple of them. You almost get like a little bit of a euphoria, to be honest, while you're doing it. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. We actually had a doc that came and interviewed here with us, and I went to like try to take him to lunch, and he just was like had coffee, and I'm like, "Are you doing an OMAD?" You know, I like him totally, and he was. He said that he lives his life that way. So I think if it works for you, it works for you.
Okay.
I would not say that if you're not really been a frequent faster to try to do 1 meal a day, I don't feel like it would be in your best interest. I feel like you get to an OMAD when you feel it. That's what I would
Yeah,
say.
because I can stretch
can
all
do
day
it?
and just
Yeah.
live on coffee. But
And then
yeah,
have 1 meal.
Yep, and then at dinner time, that's just kind of when.
Yeah, you just got to make sure you're getting in. Yeah, they even say it's like a 2 to 3 hour eating window instead of but you just want to make sure you're getting good stuff in during that time
Okay.
so that you're staying balanced is the only thing I would say.
Yeah.
Like you have to be more aware of it than when you're eating over an
No,
8
yeah,
hour
I've seen
period.
people do OMAD and then they'll go to like a burger joint.
Right.
Yeah.
You
that's
can't
not
do
good.
OMAD and go to the burger
Yeah.
joint. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Oh, do I have other questions? Nothing. How many meals and snacks should we eat during our 8 hour window? That's a good question. So I think I talked to Katie about this too. I don't really have a number. Again, I think during your eating window, you eat when you're hungry. And I think what you're going to find is at first, you're going to feel like you have to get in a lot during that 8 hour window because like, oh my God, you know? And so what? Do that. Listen to it. Just what I would just say more than anything is you listen to your body. Just if you're hungry, eat. If you're not, don't. Now, that being said, I was very aware at first of making sure I had a really good full last meal with a lot of like healthy fat and protein and even some fiber. I would almost always end with an orange, like a navel orange that I would slice up and kind of eat. It just sort of made me feel like it was a little dessert, I guess. And it sort of was like also to me just having like a designated ending. It was just an ending. That's how I'm ending my eating. And it kind of like I start with a handful of nuts and I end with an orange kind of thing. But I would sort of push that, like I would have the orange at like 6:59, you know, and over time, and because I also like, I felt like I needed that emotionally and like, oh, well, if I stop eating at 6:15, you know, even though my eating window, I'm going to be like really hungry tomorrow, you know, so you got to eat right up until 7. I think at some point you just sort of, you know, when you're done and you're just done for the evening. And again, it's listening and it's trusting your body. Now, that being said, when you're like, it's 9 o'clock and you're like, I really want to go downstairs and have, you know, a Pop-Tart or something or some cereal, you know, don't listen to your body then. Your kitchen's closed. You put the clothes on. But yeah, so I don't really have a number of snacks and meals. I think you eat when you're hungry during your eating window. And what you're going to find is your hunger hormones and your, I can never say the word right, satiety, being satiated, those hormones will change and that you'll actually be less hungry and you will more quickly get satiated. There was a really big study, actually, one of the people, again, in my last group, who's a physician, sent me it was in the Washington Post. I'll try to find it. But it was a study, and they were researching essentially, what exactly was it? It was essentially like, did intermittent fasting, when people consumed the same number of calories, whether they intermittent fasted or ate them throughout the day. So really testing, does intermittent fasting in and of itself make you lose weight? The answer is no. Okay, but the researcher made his group go back and run the numbers like 3 or 4 times, because he was a huge proponent of intermittent fasting and weight loss, and had been talking to, he had done it himself, he really believed it, and he didn't believe the research. And in the end, what they found was, when you look at people who intermittent fast, they naturally consume less calories. And that's probably more where the weight loss comes than the intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has many benefits on a cellular level that aren't necessarily have to do with weight loss. It has more to do with that hormesis, that adaptive stress, that DNA repair, but in terms of weight loss, it probably is that over time, you just consume less because your hunger hormones change. You get full faster and you're not quite as hungry. And so you lose weight.
How long does it take for the hunger hormones to go away?
That's a good question. I would probably say, to be honest, I don't know scientifically. I would just say, talking to people and myself, probably somewhere in the 4 to 6 week range.
Okay.
I have a feeling before that you'll have days that and that's what I mean. All of a sudden you're going to be like, it's 1 o'clock. Oh my God, I haven't even thought about food, or I haven't even, not hungry. Those will kind of come and go and stick pattern in there, but really until like you can just successfully do an OMAD on a regular basis if you wanted to, just because that's how you naturally feel, that's probably weeks to months. Yeah.
Are there restrictions for let's just call it dinner, the last meeting? Like, I've been told not to even have natural sugars like fruits.
Right.
Dinner.
Right.
Is there anything
So
like that?
the question is there other restrictions for your sort of last meal, your quote dinner, in terms of like what you should eat? Not to me. So, I mean, I guess it's what you want out of it. I mean, so she was saying she has heard maybe no, not even natural sugars. To me, I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't do that, but I've
Yeah.
been told that to try it.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I guess, to me, if you're looking for weight loss, sure, decrease your natural sugars, because then you're not going to have as much circulating glucose that you have to then burn, that then you have to go through your liver, that then you start getting to your fat, so you get to that metabolic switch sooner, especially if you decrease all the really simple sugars, which are just in your bloodstream like that. And you've got to burn those. You got to get rid of those quick, or they're just going to store. So in that regard for weight loss, but I know a lot of people, a number of people who signed up here, like that is one of their main goals. But I would really tell you that like Slow and Steady is not a weight loss program. Weight loss is very often a side effect of it, but that's not yeah.
And actually the context was I wanted to build muscle.
Muscle.
And so that was the context, not losing,
Not
I don't
weight
really
loss.
care about losing weight.
Right.
I want to be leaner.
So
Yeah.
that's getting rid of sugar totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to have lean muscle, and your bodybuilder will tell you this right before they do their competition, like no sugar. Sugar makes you like plump it, but if you want to see like definition in your muscles, don't eat sugar for a few days, or look at your muscles after the no sugar challenge. You're like, literally do your biceps and take a picture before and after, or do whatever, like flex before and after with muscles when we do this upcoming, and see if you see a difference, because with no added sugars, your muscles will get way more defined. It's amazing. So yes, I agree with that.
Does that have to do with inflammation in the body, like with sugar?
Part of it for
Swelling?
sure, fluid retention, inflammation.
Fluid retention.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sugar's osmotic, pools, fluid.
Yeah, I guess that's like my biggest concern. So like I've done challenges before where I have to like keep track of my macros, like I'm working out like 6-7 times a week, and then I need so many grams of protein, but I feel like I'm not eating as much protein, and so I'm just worried that I'm gonna like lose all my muscle definition.
Right.
Not eating so much.
Yeah, and protein's interesting stuff. I have a really like, I'm not exactly sure where I fall with protein right now. Mostly I live with 2 teenage girls who are really into weight building and are doing all this protein powder. And there is something not right about that. I think there is something. I am definitely,
Agree.
you need to get protein from your food. It's like eggs are great. Yeah. And so I
Greek
feel really
yogurt.
torn because I know there's a lot of research out there and a lot on social media about building muscle and protein and pre-workout and protein powder and even collagen.
It tastes awful.
It's awful. And we really have found with one of our teenagers, especially, her anxiety is way worse. We literally made her go off of it for 3 months and her anxiety level came way down. She actually realized it. Like, we didn't even have to tell her. She's like, oh my God, I don't feel as anxious. Like, duh. But you know what I mean? It's just, so Steph, I don't know what to say about that. I would just say, get your protein through your food. And if you feel like you want a certain number of grams of protein, that's important to you, just try if you can to get it through real food during your eating window. You're going to realize you're not going to be very hungry. You're going to be very full during that eating window, but that's okay.
When my bodybuilder friend was really doing bodybuilding,
Right.
I would put a raw egg in a shake.
Yeah. Not perfect. Yeah, that's what. Well, look at Rocky, you guys. Come on, you guys.
And my diet.
Eggs are the perfect protein. I agree. Do you try to limit dairy, or is dairy okay? Good question. We're definitely going to talk about more of that with clean eating. To me, eating clean, the little quick preface in it is eating clean is minimal processed foods or packaged foods. It's sustainable meats and eggs, idea of cage-free. And I know some of that can be expensive, but I think as sustainable as you can afford. But proteins, no gluten, minimal dairy, and very little added sugars. I think to do, like, we're going to do, August 1st through the 14th, we're going to do this, no added sugar challenge to kick off our clean eating phase. And I do that really purposely because I do want you guys to get off the added sugars and sort of see how you feel. And then by doing that, you naturally are going to not eat gluten, not eat dairy, and not eat a lot of packaged food. So it's all going to happen really naturally. And then what I say is, after these 2 weeks, as you start to bring a little bit in, you get to kind of pick and choose what feels good. Because a lot of people through this realize, oh my God, my skin is so much better, or my gut feels better, or I'm sleeping better, and so then you have to pick and choose, like, what do you want to bring back in? And I would suggest when we do it, we'll talk about it, but you do it slowly, right? Like, you bring dairy back in for like 3 or 4 days to see, how is my gut? How am I sleeping? How is my skin? How is my mood? And then you decide, then you bring some gluten in, so we'll do a little bit of and it's elimination, but it's eye-opening. And I think it's really important for our guts to get rid of all that crap so we can just kind of start fresh. So that's kind of what's coming up next after this intentional fueling habit. So we go through the rest of the month with that and then go into the Beyond Sugar Challenge. I do have, I'll send you guys, and it'll be on my website hopefully in August, but I have a Beyond Sugar Challenge recipe book. I think, Shan, you have one. And so I think it's 14 or 16 recipes that you'll get every day, one in the email. But again, some of the feedback was the title of the emails don't have the recipes in them. And so if I send one out and you want to go back and find it, you're like, what the hell was that in? And there's so many emails. And so number one, there'll be a click on my website in August, but also I'll send you guys a digital link. And then also, if you wanted to, we printed them. So I sell the actual cookbook for $12 or something. And you can just—
That's awesome.
Through MailChimp. And ideally, and I'll give you that link, or we can get the book to you beforehand, because it's nice to maybe, I talk about planning meals as we get into the clean eating field. We talk about planning meals again in the beginning of the week, and again, it's just setting yourself up for success. And so it'll be nice to have those recipes available to you for those 2 weeks, because you can kind of like count on them as stuff you can eat. Right, during those 2 weeks. Because a lot of times it's like this fear of like, what am I going to eat? What am I going to cook for my family? What am I going to do? And so these are just, here's 14 things or 16 things you can eat and make, and they're not that hard. So, yeah. So, you guys on Zoom, speaking of which, I brought, but I brought there's Jen. Wait. But there's apples and apple and cashew butter and coconut. I put chocolate chips on them today because I'm not doing the no sugar challenge, but during the no sugar challenge, there's cacao nibs. They're very bitter, but they're good on that. So what else do you guys got? What other questions? Or that's Molly. What do people have? I'm going to grab an apple thing while somebody thinks of a question. Well, if you don't have a question, I have one more thing to mention.
I just noticed today, I think we were talking about this, that when you're kind of staying in the video, I was so busy.
Right.
I had so many errands and have so many.
Right.
I can't hear her.
I'll repeat it. I'll
Okay.
repeat it when she.
I just
Yeah.
found I didn't really think about it.
Mhm.
There's so much going on. And I was like, I guess that's already.
Yeah. Molly's just saying she had one of those days where she was so busy and she just sort of realized she was going, and sort of didn't even realize that she hadn't eaten, and you weren't even all that hungry, right? Like it didn't even cross her mind, or she wasn't feeling obsessed with it, but just, yeah, I'm just doing my
Nice.
thing this morning and living life, and didn't really feel like I had to stop and get food quite yet. So
What are your thoughts on like Starbucks matcha?
Starbucks matcha. What are my thoughts on Starbucks matcha? So during your fasting period,
Well, yeah,
is it 50 calories or less?
no.
Then you have it when you break your fast with it.
Okay.
If that's what you want to break your fast with, do that.
Because sometimes I can get right to 14 hours,
Mhm.
have that.
Yeah.
And then I'm not even eating for another 6 hours.
Fine. Yeah.
But
Your
it's not
body-
16.
Hmm?
It's not 16 yet, but I need the
It
caffeine.
doesn't, honestly, the benefit when you make that metabolic switch, 16 is just a number that a lot of people talk about, or it kind of got I think it just became vernacular and, in intermittent fasting, 16-8 split. The benefit is anytime 12 hours after, your body can make that metabolic switch. The whole key is, when do you switch from utilizing sugar or stored sugar, glycogen, to fat? That's the switch that you're looking for with intermittent fasting. That's the sweet spot. When you make that metabolic switch, that's when all the benefits come. So that, for some people, that's 12 hours.
Yeah,
But really anything after 12 hours is a win.
it's kind of I don't want to have it too late because I'm very caffeine sensitive, but I need something.
Uh-huh.
So I do try just plain tea, but sometimes.
Yeah. So to me, if it's under 50 calories, you can have it during your fasting window. So I put a little bit of that kefir almond cream in my tea. And I think I do a tablespoon or two. It's 15 to, so it's 30 calories or something. And if I have one of those in the morning, then I don't know. But 50 calories or less, your body still sees that as fasting. It recognizes it doesn't start to really metabolize until you're over 50 calories.
Okay.
That makes sense?
So what I've been doing, because usually the last 2 hours of my fasting window before I start eating, there's days where I do get really hungry, and drinking
Me too.
sparkling water really helps get rid of that hunger.
Yeah. Water?
Yeah, the Waterloos or whatever, because it's got the flavoring to them, and it's I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just bought one at Whole Foods the other day. It's the flavor cherry limeade.
Oh,
Ooh.
that would probably be
That
so
one's
good.
pretty
Is it
good.
Waterloo?
Yeah.
Is it Waterloo?
Yeah,
that
it's
brand?
it's that brand. Yeah,
Oh, yum.
that really helped me.
I have a question related. So I run every morning, and I tend to I think we've talked about this, but I've never really been an eat before I run person, but and so it wasn't really an issue for me. And so I'm wondering, in terms of like, cause I it's pretty rigorous, you know, I'm out there for an hour plus in the morning running, usually six to 9 miles. And so how does that with the intermittent fasting, is that like, do I go into that fat burning phase sooner than 12 hours? If I'm, and it was like, it's like, does it shift it? So I'm like, am I getting even more benefit by continuing to,
I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
And
part
then
of it
some
too, I was going to say part of the other interest I have in the intermittent fasting from a training perspective is that I wanted to train my body to burn fat as fuel while running, so that like I'm not a, like in races and longer distance efforts, I'm taking some of that, you know, quick fuel in, but I really want to train my body to burn fat.
Yeah, I would say not to use that quick fuel then. That's how you get there.
Yeah.
The quick fuels. Shot blocks or I mean, it's just, you got to be careful though, that too, you know, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot to that. That's probably more to talk about, especially depending on how long you're going, just in terms of depleting even like your sodium, and you know, you have to be really
if I go beyond an hour and a half.
Yeah, so you can't just say, oh yeah, don't eat and go run 15 miles, you know. So yeah. If this is on YouTube, that's not what I'm saying, okay? Dr. Perrin gets sued for saying people should go run on an empty stomach 25 miles. They burn their fat. Yeah, there's so much to it. And the problem is that I find is that there's so much out there, it's really hard to know what to trust. And especially with social media, like, you know, you see something that looks pleasant or good, or somebody looks healthy, and you just assume like, oh, I'll just do what they're doing and I'm going to look that way. It's like, ooh, you gotta be really careful. So, like what? Yeah, haircut. Exactly. Yeah, my hair does not look this way. So,
I have a question about fats.
Yeah.
Like avocado and nuts, like cashews. That's what I love the most. Those are full of the monounsaturated fat, right?
Yes.
Those aren't the kind that are going to raise your cholesterol.
It really shouldn't quite as much, right? Yeah, avocado, coconut has a little bit higher saturated fat. Than some of the different oils. Olive oil has really, you know, it's low, but you just got to be really careful. Like a lot of people with people have done Whole30, and we'll talk about this too around the clean eating. That's use a lot of coconut oil, really high in saturated fat. So then people were doing that.
On coconut oil.
Yeah. And then your cholesterol levels also get wonky on a lot of that. So, you know, again, everything in moderation, but extra virgin olive oil is probably by far your best. And I don't know what there's about pressings and a lot of stuff that you can look in the olive oils. I haven't really delved all that deep, to be honest. I just try to get extra virgin olive oil.
There's such a thing as avocado oil.
Avocado oil is very good, and we have that at home too. Yeah.
Sunflower oil. That tastes okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some years ago, I was suddenly craving oil. That makes sense, but I was like pouring olive oil on my other food and I saw this recipe that was like water and olive oil and a lemon blended together with a little bit of vanilla, and it was delicious. And I made that for like a couple weeks, and I don't know why I was craving the oil.
Yeah, sometimes she's talking about craving olive oil and a little concoction that she made.
It was weird, but and it was short-lived.
Right.
But there was like this one summer where
I think listening to what your body, I mean, it's really huge in pregnancy. I'll tell you that. Like your body will tell you what you need and what you don't when you're pregnant. And I think there's a lot to that. I think especially as women, our intuition about our bodies is huge. And I feel like in some ways, sometimes embarrassed with the medical community that we don't listen to people as much as we do. Like, you know, many people come in and say, I know there's something wrong. I know there's something. And granted, we all know the hypochondriacs and, you know, the people who, you know, sort of, you almost manifest something to be wrong. But when somebody's coming in and really saying, and in pregnancy, it's for sure, like if you have a real weird gut that something's wrong. And as your doc, I would definitely listen to that. But I just think we need to trust ourselves and our bodies as women. Like we know what's going on if we take the time to be mindful and to key in. And again, that's where I want this to go. You know, within 6 months, I feel like I want everybody to have like much better idea of who they are and how they feel and what they're putting into their bodies and when they're moving their bodies and yeah, and just mindfulness. So that's really the bigger goal and the bigger picture. So whatever it's worth.
That book is on Audible, by the way.
Oh, okay. Obesity Codes on Audible. Okay, yeah, it's a great, and honestly, and make that even like, I'm gonna do 1 hit a week and I'm gonna go for 1 hour walk a week. It doesn't even have to be a slow and steady walk. Just go out after dinner and walk and throw in your earbuds and listen to the obesity code. You kill all these birds with one stone. You're bringing down your insulin, you're moving your body, you're going to listen to the obesity code, you're going to get you can check off 3 boxes with 1 action. Tick, tick, tick. So. All right, you guys, it's almost 8. Anybody have anything? I really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you so much.
So wonderful. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you next time. Maybe I'll
See
see
you.
you walk on Sunday if anybody's available.
This
Look
Sunday,
forward.
Sounds
right?
good.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
You can bring
Thank you.
kids, bring whoever.
Thank you.
Bye, you guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
have a good
Cashew butter.